Well, more on the other breaking story out of Washington tonight. The White House official has confirmed the U.S. is pausing military aid to Ukraine. And this comes after that contentious meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy last week. Sarah Galashan is following these developments. Story broke just in the last hour. What's the latest?
Yeah, well, we have a little more information, and that is, in addition to the confirmation that this is happening, that it is in order to, quote, review aid and ensure that this aid is contributing to a solution. Now, according to Bloomberg and Fox News, they have a little more detail here, and they're saying that this pause is going to last until Trump determines that, quote, leaders, no leader is actually mentioned, but I think we can assume that he's talking about Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and this is a White House official that is being quoted here, but that leaders demonstrate a good faith commitment to peace. And as well, from Fox News, that this is not a permanent termination, but rather, importantly, that it is a pause, a distinction to be made there. In other words, it could be reinstated. This does follow Donald Trump's comments just earlier today when he was asked whether or not he was considering suspending military aid. He said that had not been discussed, though he did also say that he felt that Volodymyr Zelenskyy should be more appreciative. And of course, that does really follow the kind of comments that we heard coming out of the Oval Office during what was really an explosive clash between the two leaders and Vice President J.D. Vance. And let's play a little bit more of that.
The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
So pause is the word that we've heard from the White House official. Do we have any sense of what that means?
Right. So what it means, we're talking about military aid here. And what it means, according to Bloomberg, which is reporting that any U.S. military equipment that is not in the Ukraine right now, that it is not going to be. It is on pause. So that means whether or not it is scheduled to be sent. It also means whether it's in transit. If it is on aircraft, it's not going to be brought to the country. If it's on a ship that's in a transit area in Poland, it also will not be brought to the country. I have been online looking for any comment coming out of Ukraine, specifically from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He has posted just 3 hours ago talking about what he sees as necessary for there to be lasting peace in Ukraine, talking about, and no surprise here, security guarantees. That's top of his list. And that was, we know, absent from the deal that was not signed in the Oval Office between him and President Trump on Friday. And in that latest post to X, what he does talk about is discussions that he's having with other partners, specifically European partners, for what might be a special diplomatic and security architecture that could bring the country closer to peace. So certainly he is talking about peace, but it is not satisfying the U.S. president.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much. Okay, as this story develops live, let's get some analysis from Andrew Rasulis. He is a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute and a retired Department of National Defense official. And Andrew, how will this pause change what's happening in Ukraine on the ground?
Well, it will make the Ukrainians think very clearly whether they wish to continue on the long war, which is what Zelenskyy said today, and this is what Trump is reacting to. Because Trump is saying, no, you're not going to fight a long war, not with our aid. That's why he's given the pause. So the Ukrainians have to really think hard now whether they will back down from their insistence on U.S. guarantees and insistence on fighting a long war with Russia until they get the just peace, as they define it, or they will back down, allow Trump to negotiate a deal with Russia that Ukraine will sidle up to. That's really what this has come down to now.
And how much does Ukraine rely on U.S. aid?
It's a 40% figure versus 60% what others supply, but in the 40% are critical American military assets that no other country can substitute. For example, the long-range missiles that hit deep inside Russia, that's American controlled and American manufactured, or they control the license for those. 2, the data for those systems. That's GPS stuff that only the United States can approve. So even if it's a British system or a French system that's using American stuff to go in deep in Ukraine, they can't do it without American data. So they control that. They essentially remove a fundamental offensive capability that the Ukrainians have.
How do you think Russia is reacting tonight?
I think they are probably guarded. I've not seen any statements within the hour, but they have been open-minded about Trump's willingness to negotiate a peace deal and bring this war to an end. And they're also, of course, conducting bilateral negotiations with the United States on diplomatic relations and so on. So I'm sure they are waiting with some cautious optimism that this might actually bring the Ukrainians to the table under pressure to negotiate an end to the war that's sooner rather than later with watered down expectations. The Ukrainians are going to have to water down their ideas of how this war ends.
After, however you want to describe what happened in the White House between Zelenskyy and Trump on Friday, after that encounter, we saw a show of support for Ukraine from world leaders, including some countries with, big militaries and huge support for Ukraine, France, Germany, the UK. Is it possible for other allies to fill the U.S. void?
No, because those systems that I've just described that are uniquely American, no one else can offset that. So basically, Ukraine will be short, and there is no substitute. So Ukraine could fight. It could continue to fight what I would call a strategic defense in depth, hoping over time to wear down the Russians. And if they wear down the Russians, maybe they hope that in time they'll get a better deal. That is a very high risk and uncertain strategy.
So knowing what you know, what do you think is going to happen to the war between Ukraine and Russia now?
Given that inside of Ukrainian politics, there is an element, you can call it the nationalist element, that is very reluctant, almost fanatically so, against any kind of deal that the Americans are trying to drive, the Ukrainians might walk away from the American offer to come back and negotiate a deal. It's everything right now is open. We are on a knife's edge. I cannot predict it for you, except to say that there are two options open, but there are people in Ukraine that will do almost everything to avoid falling into the American pathway.
Andrew, I appreciate your expertise and your analysis. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Ian.